I'm talking.
All right. We got Wednesday night chats. Number 6, I'm pretty sure. Uh,
Somewhere in there.
it's me and Dennis tonight, just hanging out. Um, yeah, that's it. So, man, I've been getting my butt kicked recently. Let me tell you what. I have allergies, and I hit my head so many times yesterday. And, like, so I was helping my grandmother move yesterday, and I'm too tall as a human being. Shouldn't be. And I was like, moving around. What are those things? Washers and dryers and stuff like that, and bed frames and all, moving stuff upstairs. So I was just smacking into crap constantly. And so I wake up today and I'm like, just wrung out, and like my face hurts in places. Like
Yeah.
I
Wait,
just
your
like,
face.
yeah, just like touched my face, and I was like, oh yeah, I bashed that against the corner of a shelf yesterday, so now it's just like bruised on my bone meats, right? And then allergies just descended on my life, right? So a challenging day, right? like there are a lot of opportunities to just be like, oh, everything's terrible. Oh, and I screwed up with work because I
Oh.
rescheduled. I had a student who wanted to reschedule this week for today, and I just completely forgot. So just late in the day, I'm just like, oh no, oh.
You're like, man, I've got nothing to do today. This is
Yep,
so crazy.
exactly. I was like, yeah, man, okay, I got nothing to do. And then I was just trying to like find ways to mitigate my allergies. Like I've been wearing a shirt as a mask, just like all day, just cruising around the house looking like Ninja Gaiden in this piece, and just trying to find some measure of relief, and then just getting a lot of get a lot of negative feedback from the universe today. That was just the experience that I was having, um, and having the experience that all right, this is fine,
This is
right?
fun.
This is fine, and not even from a not from an ignoring that was the experience that I was having, but from an accepting that was an experience that I was having and taking the steps to take care of myself within that experience. Like when we were talking earlier about, oh, when are we going to get on tonight? It was like, oh, well, let's get on at 9:30 because I really got to get some food. Because I spent like the entire afternoon just wallowing in pollen, just destroying me, right? Just in this whole unfortunate immune experience. And I was like, man, I really haven't had enough to eat today. I gotta get myself together, right, and be ready to party, ready to have a good time this evening. So uh, that led me just to think about a little bit about the idea of strength. So I'm a person who likes being strong. That's my mo. That always has been. Like I've always been somebody who likes to do fitness stuff and likes to be good at stuff. Even when that's obnoxious and requires a lot of effort and being gross and sweaty and stuff like that. Um, and so for me, it's really interesting to talk to people about the experience of being strong, like what that means in their life, because other people have very different relationships with that, you know. And I have this sort of idea that I've been tossing around forever, that there are sort of two ways that people try to get strong. In a big picture sense, right? Where strength is sort of the ability to cope with the demands of life and then to act in the world in a meaningful way to create the sorts of experiences that you're looking for. Um, and in my experience, people try to get strong by turning themselves into fortresses quite often. Like if I just control enough things, if I just tighten down enough things, if I just make sure enough pieces are no longer moving, I can make this my life simple enough that it's controllable. Um, and uh, that's really stressful, and in my experience, doomed to failure because life is big and it has so many moving pieces, and you can't do that unless you so tightly constrain your life experience that you're not really living, as I would look at it. Um, and there's an alternative approach to strength, which is not to try to be a fortress, and not even to try to resist life, but just to try to get out of life's way. Life is happening, and it's like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna float along and roll with this, and whatever's happening is happening, and it's okay, which is founded in acceptance. And so the image that I like to use for this has been a long monologue, I apologize, is the difference between being strong like an oak tree and strong like a willow tree. Like an oak tree is just super hard wood, and it grows super fat trunk and super fat limbs, and it's this big, an oak tree is beautiful. I'm not trying to knock an oak tree, right? But if the wind gets strong enough, the oak tree either resists, or it just blows over, and the whole project is done, right? If a sufficiently strong wind comes along, the oak tree just blows over, and that's the end of it. Whereas the willow tree is very flexible. So if a very strong wind comes along, the willow tree just goes, and then when the wind's done, it's right back. Just gets out of the way. Right? Don't fight the wind. Don't try to resist it. Just get out of the way. Lay down. Let it pass. It's that second model of strength that I feel like that's the experience I was having today. Is, this stuff sucks. Cool. I could spend my day in a process of being upset about the fact that this sucks, that I'm having an experience that sucks. Or I can just do whatever I can do to take care of myself within that experience, knowing that it's finite, it's going to pass. Like, this much pollen can't live in the atmosphere for this long, right? And tomorrow's a new day and a new crop of students, and I probably won't fail to go to all my lessons. So tomorrow I'm going to be having a different experience. It's fine. And today, just gonna lay down and embrace the experience that I'm having today, because that's what's gonna leave me with the greatest reserves of strength to approach tomorrow.
Don't get your roots ripped out or your fucking tree trunk ripped in half.
No, just bend right out of the way. So that's my little monologue on strength. I thought I'd throw that out there.
So it's interesting you say that too, because God, man, like especially at work, I think I'm one of those people who I'm prone to like just keep trying and keep pushing and like just keep trying to take more and more and more until I break. And then I go like, man, why was I so stressed out, or why did I do that? And it's like, oh, it's because I didn't you tried to fight every fight, like tried to be strong on every single front instead of doing that whole strategic, like, oh, only fight the battles you can win, or choose your battles. But it's like, it's not so much about choosing battles. It's like choosing which things to actually like concern yourself with at the moment, because you have such a finite reserve of energy. So it's like, that's something I'm having so much trouble trying to come to grips with, because for me, it's like anything I see that's wrong, it's like, oh, we need to fix that. And it's like, oh yeah, well, I mean, we need to fix everything. Like, right, you look at the world, it's like, we got to fix a lot of shit. We can just, pick up some litter today and work on some other stuff tomorrow.
Well, even beyond choosing your battles, which is in it of itself is a struggle, is just not having battles. Right? Like accepting that there is some ideal that we can conceive of, right? But our imagination vastly outstrips our ability to do anything in the world. And all human beings fundamentally are going to fall short of their ideal if they're even striving towards some sort of coherent ideal, which most of the time they're not. Right? Most of the time, most people's efforts are barely better than random. They're just sort of poking along. It's like, have you ever seen ants trying to move a big chunk of cookie? Half the ants are pushing from the wrong side. And it's a miracle that the thing ever actually coherently moves. Right? It's like Steve and Roger and Jim are over there pushing away from the nest.
Hey,
what are you guys doing?
They can be pulling.
What are you guys doing over there?
You're just not being very efficient.
Yeah, right. But that's we're not tremendously more efficient, and individually we're brilliant, intelligent creatures, and so we like to think that our collective efforts can be an extension of that, and they're not. There's a dynamic to coordination, all that is its own new field of experience, and it's fraught with difficulty. And if we're just accepting of that, right? Again, if we're not trying to resist that, if we're just accepting this is how things are,
Yeah.
then it's a lot easier to intelligently employ our research or our resources to make sure we're not the ant pushing away from the nest, right? And to actually do something productive. And also recognizing that other people have different visions, right? And if you're viewing every situation as fighting a battle, you're going to miss opportunities for actually aligning your vision with somebody else's. Because once you've engaged in a contesting dynamic with somebody, it's almost impossible to get them to hear anything that you have to say, because now they want to win.
Yeah, and your horns are locked. You're both pushing
each
other. Yeah.
Wanting to win is one of the most destructive impulses that human beings regularly act on. It's just
I think that's you see that with the freeway and driving every day. Everyone's like, I need to be in front of all of these other cars. I need to be the first to have to hit my brakes when we come up on the next piece of gridlock. And it's like there's no rationality to that. But it's like people get this drive in them just to fight.
And so that's the perfect example, because it's the antithesis of productivity, right? Because traffic shock waves happen because of that behavior. So if you take a perfectly reasonable volume of traffic, but you have people making a lot of decisions, you create a lot of braking opportunities, and then you create a lot of lag situations where somebody over brakes because they didn't notice the person in front of them braking until too late to brake at a reasonable level. So they brake super hard, and that causes the person behind them to panic and brake super hard, and it just propagates backwards, and you have stop and go traffic for no reason because one person had to merge in front of somebody else. You have 3 hours of gridlock that could have been smoothly flowing traffic.
And then you have more people who are like, oh, this stop and go, so they try and weave through more and then create
that's humanity.
Yeah,
that's fundamentally
sums up humanity.
Who we are, right? We have this little tiny limited view, and we cannot even conceive of, let alone perceive, the big picture. And so we just act on our narrow interest without any understanding of the broad scale consequences. And if you try to fight that, what are you going to do? Are you going to stop in gridlock traffic and pass out pamphlets? Is that, I mean, you can't possibly fight that battle. You can just do your best to not participate in those dynamics where they're occurring. If you, in that particular instance, you can break traffic shockwaves just by keeping 3 to 4 car lengths in front of you.
Yeah, you want to go like in a
unoccupied, right? So that you never have to hit your brakes. The person in front of you hits their brakes, and you can just engine brake and still maintain a safe following distance. What that means is that the people behind you don't see your brake lights flash and panic. They just notice that they're getting closer, and they slow down at a reasonable rate. And also, when people need to merge, you don't have to hit your brakes when somebody merges in front of you. Anyway, that's a long ramble, but that behavior is shown to break traffic waves, and you can be the hero on the road. But the problem is everybody will see you leaving that space in front of you, and they'll go, oh, dude, I can get ahead if I fill up that space, right? Which means you have to then slow down some more to open the space up again, and it will almost immediately be filled by some other person being a self-centered jerk. And it's really easy to go, fuck the hell with this. Screw these people. And get into a whole process of being a jerk in response to people being a jerk, which is a microcosm of all efforts to be a better human being. That's all it is we make a decision. We go like, yes, this right here, this is how I'm going to do it. This is going to make things better. And we start trying, and people see our efforts to be decent as an opportunity to exploit. And then they're dicks. And then we go, well, now I'm losing to dicks. And then we're right back into it, right? So we have to we have to steel ourselves before we take any steps like that. If you're gonna be the traffic hero and you're gonna leave 4 car lengths in front of you, you have to, before you even turn the ignition, reconcile yourself to the fact that everybody is going to do everything they can to undo your good intentions, and that is never going to be an excuse for you to change your behavior.
Because
I'm going to just keep doing the good thing, and people are going to be dicks, and that's fine. The fact that other people are being dicks and having some experience with success on some criterion that I dub dickish, that's fine. That doesn't have anything to do with me. I'm just going to keep doing the thing that I understand is the best for me in this situation.
I guess to bring that around to that, like, of just choosing not to have battles versus like which ones you should fight is like when you're fighting a battle where you're like, I made these 4 spaces and someone put a car in there, so I don't have 4 spaces. You don't need to fight that battle of like, I need those 4 spaces back. Just slow down a little bit, create more spaces, let that person occupy that space they did. Just create a new 4 spaces.
And just
you don't have to fight with that guy to get those spaces back.
Yeah, that guy, and if you hadn't made those 4 spaces, if you only had 1 space, chances are that guy would have put his car in it anyway.
Yeah,
you just would have created a traffic jam when you had to brake to get out of his way. You're winning. You're doing the thing, right? But you have to make sure that it continues to live in a frame that acknowledges your success. And you have to always be motivated to do any good thing for yourself.
And this, oh, sorry. Go.
Well, this is a hard point for a lot of people because they think that if you're doing good things, you have to do them for like altruistic reasons, right? And so like there's this whole like saint martyr complex of ideas where it's like, oh, you have to just do these. If you want to do something good in the world, you have to do it for these perfectly altruistic reasons. And you can't be self-interested. And it's like, no, never under any circumstances. That's a dumb way to do things. Just do the things that take care of you, right? It's like I'm gonna be nice and kind to people that I meet because that's a nicer way to be a human being, and my life is orders of magnitude better if I'm just like nice and if I'm nice and somebody reflects that back to me, that's really great. And if I'm nice and somebody's a dick, that's unfortunate, but at least I was nice. At least I know that I was being cool, so all right. Whereas the alternative is be an asshole and everybody reflects that back to me, and then I'm like, why is everybody a dick to me all the time?
And I think we've talked about that before, is like whatever you put in is what you're going to get out. So just always try to be good so you get good out. If you're just an asshole, you're only going to get asshole back.
Yeah, and on the flip side, if you're being nice to people, it feels really good. It feels super good to just be kind. Well, I don't know that everybody has this experience, but it's certainly my experience that there's like a module in my brain that's like, oh, you're doing like a cool pro-social thing, like just being kind and generous or compassionate. Here's a shitload of dopamine. It was like, oh, rad, I like that. That's the feel-good chemical. Sweet, I don't even need to do drugs. I just go around being nice to people, and it's like, oh, yeah, this is great. I'm having a great life. One day I was walking along. I just got out of a lesson that just went terrible, right? It was just awful because it was somebody wanted help studying for like the GMAT or something, and all of the problems for that exam, as far as I can tell, are just written to be like tricky. So the problem is not the mathematics in any way. The problem is that they ask you to interpret it in weird ways, or they make assumptions that are just actually different from the standard assumptions that are used in mathematics, right? And then they ask you like a tricky question about that with weird assumptions. And so like for the first like 20 minutes of this, I couldn't get a single question right. And then it clicked like, oh, this is the stupid thing that they're doing. And then I got them all right, right? But it's not a good dynamic if you're tutoring somebody and can't get anything right. Right? So this is a whole bombed situation. And I'm coming out of that and I'm like, wow, that went awfully. It brought it back around, but it started off it was a stressful experience. And I'm walking down the street, walking down Van Ness Street in San Francisco, big old street. And this guy's just walking along, and he's got like a big trash bag, right? And it's like a younger guy. He looks like he's my age, and he's like clearly
Full of
like
goods.
he's clearly like dirty and like probably homeless and having a rough go, right?
Yeah.
And I just see this guy, and he's crossing the street, and I'm standing at the street corner, and I just see him, and I just kind of like nod at him and just smile, like, "What's up?" And this guy just stops, and he looks at me. And he's like, "You're just walking around smiling at everybody, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's what I'm about, man." He's like, "Dude, that is fucking awesome. You just made my day, man." And he like came over and like shook my hand and shit. And I was like, "All right, awesome, man, cool." And I rode that high for like the rest of the week. Right? Like that felt so good.
Because
Right?
you kind of like you fucking someone grokked you. They kind of grokked what was going
I
on.
got what was going on. And I do get that periodically where it's like I'm just cruising along. I've just trained myself to like make eye contact with people and smile. Just put positivity out into the world, right? And people will periodically just stop me and just be like, "Dude, that's awesome. That is really cool that you're just going around doing that." And I'm like, "Fuck yeah," you know?
I feel like we've bounced topics a bit at this point, but no, I totally agree with that fact because we in our these giant cities, the giant corporations, everything. Because this happens at work a lot. I try to like make eye contact and at least smile with people. A lot of people like they don't want to engage. They'll be like, "Good," and there are the days where I'm like that too. But I realize it's like, man, we're so deprived of just that simple social like, hey, just hi,
Yeah. And
like,
again, I'm just doing it because I'm happy for my default response to my fellow human being to be warm and inviting.
yeah,
It
no, just we need
just
that.
feels better for me,
Yeah.
right? And it's nice that sometimes I get the feedback that it feels good for others as well, right? But even if I never got that, I would do it anyway. And even if everybody who I made eye contact with like looked away and was like, "Rrr, rrr, rrr, rrr," it's like, okay, well, that's the experience that they're having. But what I know is that I'm not contributing to that experience. Right?
Yeah.
I'm giving people opportunities to exit that experience if they want to, and if they don't want to, that's great. They can have whatever experience that they want to have. I'm over here having exactly the experience that I want to have.
I like that you're giving people the opportunity to exit like a negative experience.
So
That's
have I ever rambled to you about my favorite Jesus bit in the Bible?
the one where he like used the nunchucks, like
That
it's just like
was a woven switch. It was ropes.
no, what is your favorite
No,
Jesus?
so my favorite Jesus bit in the Bible is turning the other cheek, which is like so, in my view, misunderstood. Right?
Just misquoted in a sense, or
No. So the thing about Jesus in the Bible is that the people around Jesus at the time had no idea what he was talking about. There is all sorts of internal evidence of that, especially if you read Mark, which is the earliest of the Gospels. All of his apostles are basically bumbling idiots the entire time, and they have no idea what Jesus is about, right? Like the best example of that, and you can trace it. So it's Mark, and then there are two derived Gospels of Matthew and Luke, which are called, those three are together called the Synoptics, and then there's John sits off by itself. It's a different source, right? But Mark is the oldest, and then Matthew, and then Luke, if I recall correctly. And Matthew and Luke rely on three additional sources plus Mark. So they borrow Mark's narrative structure, but they have these other accounts of like miracles and stuff Jesus did, and they just plop them into the narrative structure where they thought was appropriate, which means that narratively they're actually very different. But in Mark, there's a moment where Jesus feeds, like 4,000 people with like 3 loaves of bread and 2 fishes, right? It's the loaves and fishes. It's a miracle where he says, go out and just break up the bread for people and cut up the fish, and it's just infinite fish and bread, right? Which is ridiculous. But
listen, magic. God magic.
Yeah, that's the whatever, right? But the scene immediately after that, they're on a boat, they're crossing the Sea of Galilee, right? They're going to go preach somewhere else. The crowd's gotten too big. They're over it. And Jesus delivers this little mini teaching to them, and he's telling them, beware the leaven of the Pharisees. Right? Leaven is yeast, right? You mix yeast into your bread, it creates a completely different character for your bread. And he's basically saying, like, hey, you can't even let a little bit of this Pharisaical thinking get into your practice of what I'm trying to teach you about here, or it'll become a very different thing. Right? Straightforward. And so he tells them this, and he goes off, and he's like chilling off to the side on the boat, praying. And all those disciples are like gathering around, like, what was he talking about? What do you? And somebody's like, well, we forgot to bring any bread. So he's probably like calling us out that he realizes that we don't have any bread because he's like all knowing and stuff. Right? And Jesus is just like, did you guys not see me? Just feed 4,000 people. Do you think I'm worried about bread right now? Do you even know who I am? That's literally the line of questioning, right? That's where, like, are your hearts so hardened? Are your ears so blah, 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 blah? And then he's like, do you guys know who I am? And then Peter's like, you're the Messiah. And that's like the first time the M word comes out. So it's kind of a big deal narratively. But Peter didn't know what he meant when he said you're the Messiah. He thought, like, you're going to be the political leader who's going to free Jerusalem from Roman occupation. And Jesus is like, that is not at all what I'm going to do. But so that's my rant about Jesus in the Gospels and the fact that nobody understands him. And nobody, if you read all of the Gospels, because there are like 12 of them, only 4 of them made the cut to go in the big book, but there are like 12 of them and most of them still exist. But like the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, she understands what the heck Jesus is talking about, and nobody else does. So far as I can tell. But I was going to tell you about turning the other cheek, right? Because Jesus is describing, he's telling his followers how to sort of behave in adversity, right? And he says, you know, if somebody asks for like your cloak or your coat or something like that, you know, if somebody asks for your coat, give them your cloak as well. If somebody asks you to go with them for 1 mile, go with them for 2. Which is a weird political statement, because what that is referring to is the fact that Roman soldiers in occupied territories could force civilians to carry their kit for up to 1 mile. So you could just be walking along, going about your day. I'm the citizen of Judea, right? And a Roman soldier could just go like, you're carrying my bag for the next mile. Like, but I got a meeting I got to get to. It's like, doesn't matter. Are we not Roman soldiers? Is this not our province? So that wasn't a popular thing, right? And Jesus is saying, like, hey, if somebody asks you to do that for 1 mile, just go 2 of them, right? Take it to that next level. And that's the context within which he's saying, you know, if somebody strikes you on one cheek, turn the other cheek to them, right? And it's not that he's saying ignore that somebody's done this bad thing. He's saying, give this person another opportunity to make the decision that they just made. Right? This person just chose wrongly, but you're going to be a vehicle for their redemption. Give them the other cheek. Let them make a better choice. That's my personal favorite of Jesus's teachings. Because of that, because, you know, it's Jesus actually telling his followers, like, you're going to be such a vehicle for redemption in the world that even people who would do you harm, you are going to liberate them from the experience that they're having, right? The ill will that drives them towards these destructive behaviors, you're going to liberate them from that. Use yourself as a vessel. This is like microcosm of that. You just smile at people.
Yeah.
And if they're grumpy, you know, maybe this will be the chance for them to go, oh man, I don't got to be that grumpy. And maybe they'll just continue to be grumpy. You can't make that choice for them, but what you can do is create opportunities for them to make a different choice. It's been a long ramble.
Yeah, no. But I mean, like, I enjoy hearing that sort of stuff. So that's all good. But
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, how do we bring this back around to strength?
Well, so
like,
again,
you have like a really strong cheek.
Well, so again, the issue of strength is, you know, if if you are trying to control, if you're trying to be hard, it's very difficult to accept when bad things happen, or whatever meaning bad has for you, right? Because it means that you failed, right? You set out with a goal that you were going to make it impossible for bad things to happen, and a bad thing has happened, and you are a failure, right?
So, fuck.
If you don't start out with the goal that no bad things will happen, if you start out with the goal of I'm going to embrace what happens to me, and if it happens to be bad, I'm going to find the reserves of strength to deal with that. I'm going to employ all the skills that I've developed to cope, right? And I'm going to employ all the skills that I've developed to act in the world in such a way to recover from that and maybe make that not be an experience I have in the future, right? If that's your plan, then in the moment of adversity, you have the maximum of your resources available, right? Because the brittle approach to strength, the fortress model, right, being the oak tree, means that you add at the moment of maximum stress an additional stressor, which is the perception of failure. This wasn't supposed to happen, and it's happening.
Yeah.
So when you most need all of your faculties available, you're adding on an extra burden, right?
Yeah, no, that's actually a really interesting way to look at that.
So if you do this practice, if you are willow tree strong, right? If you are just getting out of life's way when it's throwing things at you and just taking what steps you can to take care of yourself in those trying times, then you've got all of it together, because it's not I am a failure because this is happening. It's I need to take care of myself because this is happening. And I have an opportunity to have the experience of strength right now in this resilient fashion, right? Strength isn't preparing in advance so well that nothing can ever hurt you. It's preparing in advance so well that no matter what happens, you come out of it unhurt. Different slant.
Yeah.
So it's a thing that it's in Buddhism there's a lot of talk about non-attachment, and people don't really grok non-attachment for a lot of reasons, but it's really non-attachment to outcomes means I do my best to bring about the best result, and whatever result happens, I experience that fully and continue doing my best. It doesn't mean I just go, oh, I don't care what happens, which would suggest, right, people take it to this I don't care place, which means you don't work really hard, right? But it's not at all about that. It's about actually focusing and working absolutely as hard as you can towards the desired outcome, with the foreknowledge that whatever happens, you are going to stay present so you can continue working as hard as you can towards the desired outcome. Rather than a thing has happened, flip tables, fuck this. Right? Where when you get emotionally invested in outcomes, as soon as adversity arises, you are now emotionally compromised. And that diminishes your ability to carry through your effort to realize whatever the ultimate goal is. And so it's not as opposed of you as people think. People think that it's either you're really invested in outcomes, or if you're not attached to outcomes, then you don't care at all. And it's like, no, I actually care maximally, because I'm making sure that all of my resources are available for caring at every stage of this process, however it turns out. And it's sort of like that applied. That fundamental shift applied to the idea of how do I prepare myself to cope with the adversity that life is going to present? Because it's going to present so much adversity because it's an adverse kind of universe. I don't know that you're allowed to use language in that way, but I just did it. So, I've never had great respect for norms in the use of language, which irritates a lot of people who know me and know that I have all of the I have all of the knowledge to be a good grammar Nazi, and I refuse. That's one of my favorite things. Is I have a friend who constantly on my use of language, she's like, "Oh my God, you're not allowed to do that," and I'm like, "Yes, I am." But
Dude,
then I
that's remake language however you want
yeah,
because
remix it, right? Mix it
that's
up. But I correct her grammar, and she's a grammar Nazi. I catch her out just to be a real silly Billy. Um, yeah, there's some good rambles in there. There's some good rants, some good
yeah.
carrying on.
I think I feel like we moved out of strength a few times, but I think it's okay because I think everything we discussed is at least something that people can chew on. So there's
Yeah,
that.
well,
Well, everything you said, I think I mostly participated by listening, but you know,
I
that's fine. I'm an awesome listener.
yes, I think that it's all actually about the experience of strength, though. If and this has been something that I've been chewing on recently, is that that's really what I want. What I want to show people in the world is that you can be strong. You can have always the experience of strength, which is the experience of I am going to be equal to whatever life decides to throw at me. Right. And to just face your day just going, it doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't in the first bit matter what happens because I'm going to do great. I'm going to come away at the end of it and I'm going to be happy with what I did. And that's an experience that's available, but you have to train, you have to get strong. And so I think that that's a theme that I want to hit more, which is why I just wanted to bounce that a little bit today. That and it was a taxing day. You know, if trees could stop having maritals in my nasal passages, that would be really great because right now they're having a very public exchange of genetic information, and I wish it was a little bit more private. So, yeah, just right all up in this region.
Oh yeah, like my face is normally red, but it's like even redder, and my nose is like swollen at this point because it's just like it's crazy right now. We did a bunch of yard work this weekend too, which just like aggravated everything. We had the leaf
Mm-hmm.
blower going, and it's just like, meh.
Yeah, I was moving all yesterday, so carrying boxes and stuff
Yeah, so
around in the world, all worn out. And then I got home, and then today I tried to garden. No, it didn't happen. I went right back inside. But it's okay because, again, whatever happens, it's fine, right?
yeah.
Like at the end of the day, like I have not died once today, right? Like I'm going to be able to feed myself tomorrow. You know, the world doesn't hate me yet.
Or so you think.
Right, thus
They just
far,
don't know you yet. That's all.
thus far, I seem to be batting 1,000. I check in with the world periodically, and people are like, "Yeah, we like you," and I'm like, "All right, awesome. I'm gonna keep trying to be nice, and hopefully, that'll keep being the case." But yeah. Anyway, so I don't have a glib, nice way to wrap this up. Let's get the heck out of here.
Have a good night, everybody.
Cheers.